It's time to talk LSU baseball with Mike Scarborough and Kendall Rogers of D1Baseball. This is Batter Up.
All right, welcome to another edition of Batter Up. Mike Scarborough here with Kendall Rogers at D1Baseball.com. And we're recording this Thursday morning. LSU's going to have a Thursday, Friday, Saturday series up in Fayetteville, Arkansas. And after two losing SEC weekends, I don't know if this is what the doctor ordered for LSU to try to get well. Kendall, I talked to a big LSU baseball friend of mine yesterday, and he said if you would give him one win right now, he would take it. And that's kind of where LSU baseball fans are at right now. That's been the mood this whole week.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long season, and we were talking off air about this, but I know this happened in the Maneri area a little bit, but I mean, I feel like LSU's gotten off to a slow starting conference before, like plenty of times over the last 15 years, and things seem to turn out just okay. So I have not pressed the panic button yet. Obviously, if they lose a series this weekend, it's a little bit different for them. I think moving forward, at that point, you're sitting at what? You'd be sitting at 3-7 in conference. Is that right? Yeah, no, 3-6 in conference. So you'd have a little bit of ground to make up. But, there's still a lot of pieces of this team I really like. And I think in due time, it'll take care of itself. I mean, the issue you run into this weekend is I think that they're kind of working from behind. And I get why Jay's kind of doing what he's doing by starting Coleman in the series opener. But, him against Hagen Smith, you never know, right? It's a rivalry series. It's the SEC. But, the advantage Arkansas has with Smith on the mound is massive. Whereas the advantage of having Holman on the mound, is there an advantage over Brady Tiger? Brady Tiger's been pretty awesome. And I guess that's the big story of this series, right? Is Arkansas's pitching has been so good. LSU's offense has certainly has some spurts. They haven't been amazing, which if you remember, Mike, when we talked in the preseason, I think I said this, I thought the offense would be solid, but I didn't think this offense would be good until towards the end of the year. And that's kind of been the case, right? They've had spurts where it's been oh, here we go. And then all of a sudden they go in a little bit of a shell. And I just think that's what you're gonna see for a while with this team, unfortunately.
Well, and that's the first question. What, in your opinion, does LSU have to do to get on track offensively?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm kind of looking back at the series finale against Florida is a big example here, right? You look at the top of the lineup, and Mac, Tommy, Hayden Travinsky, they went a combined 0 for 10 in that game. It all starts right there. If you look near the bottom of that lineup with guys like Braswell, Josh Pearson, Paxton Clean's going to have some great things, some not so great things. But when it comes to this offensive lineup, their success is in a lot of lineups are like this, right? There's not a lot of lineups in college baseball, I feel like, other than, a couple, maybe Florida, maybe A&M and some teams like that top to bottom, you're like, well, those are great lineups. I think when you look at LSU's lineup, they're a lot like a standard college lineup. If you look at the top of the lineup, it's really good. If you look at the bottom of the lineup, it's just okay. And for LSU to have success this weekend, the big three there with Mac Bingham, Tommy White, and Hayden Travinsky, and Jared had a big home run, or I say a big home run. He had a home run against Florida on Sunday, but all four of those guys are going to have big weekends. The good thing, I will say this for LSU, is when you look at the Hogs as a whole, there's not really any team out there that they've really roughed up offensively. They're not a club that's going to go out there, and I guess you can knock on wood if you want, if you believe in the superstitious stuff and the jinx. But there's not a team out there, certainly not a team of the caliber of LSU, that their offense is just worn out. So if we think it's going to be a weekend where LSU is just going to get abused, that's not going to happen. I just don't think Arkansas's offense even has enough firepower to do that. So I feel like all three of these games are going to be within reach. Of course, I predicted a sweep last week, so
I did
we'll
too.
see what happens this weekend. Yeah, it's just a weird, Florida. I'll say this, not to go back to last weekend too much, but I feel like Florida is just an incredibly difficult team to get a read on. They really are. It's almost one of those teams where they play hard when they need to play hard, if that makes any sense at all. And they played really hard over the weekend.
I was shocked when your poll came out Monday that you still had LSU 8th. As bad as things are, two SEC loss weekends, 2 run rules in a row on Sundays.
Yeah.
Is LSU fans discounting this LSU baseball team, thinking it's worse than it is? And what was that debate like? Was there some people in on y'all's conference call, or however y'all do the rankings, thought LSU should have been out of the top 10 at that point?
Not really. I mean, well, so twofold here. I still feel pretty good about LSU long term. As you can tell, and a lot of people kind of hate this about us from a ranking standpoint, but we're not very reactionary. Like, we don't go overzealous on teams. Like, it's college baseball, it's college athletes. Like, guys are going to have bad weekends, so we typically will not just totally annihilate a team unless they just have an atrocious week. And LSU still had a 2-2 week and beat a pretty good La Tech team in midweek, actually pretty handily, if I remember. So overall, really wasn't a bad week. And so there wasn't a lot of discussion about moving them any further. I do think if they lose the series this weekend, and I think how they lose the series this weekend, right? Like, I'm one of those people, like, it's one thing if you lose 2 out of 3 on the road in the SEC, because that's not hard to do, right? Especially against Arkansas. But if they go up there, and let's just say they get walked off, and let's just say the second game's a one-run game or a 2-run game where Arkansas scored a run in the 8th to, for an insurance run. Like, I don't look at that kind of team and go, oh, that's a team that needs to drop from 8 to 18. You know what I mean?
Right.
Even with 3 straight series losses, because not only did they win a game, but like one hit and they would have won the series. So I think how LSU plays this weekend is extremely important because they're not, in dire straits to lose a series. But I think if you go up there in a series where your back's against the wall, you're kind of a raccoon pin in the corner, and if your reaction as an LSU team is to play horribly, then that makes me a little concerned about them. But I don't think they're going to play horribly.
Well, of course, these batter up updates each and every week during the baseball season is brought to you by attorney Kenneth P. Haynes, and let's hear from Kenny.
Kenny Haynes is a proud 1989 graduate of LSU Law School with a passion for justice. Kenny stands out as the only lawyer in the state, board certified in both appellate practice and family law. Drawing from 34 years of trial experience, Kenny has navigated the most complex aspects of real people's lives. If you need help in Northwest Louisiana with a family issue, legal issue, or a highly skilled trial attorney, call Kenny, 318-222-2100. And speaking of winning, Kenny would like to recognize our 2023 national champions and congratulate coaches Kim Mulkey and Jay Johnson. Go Tigers!
And Kenny, of course, is the unofficial official attorney of TigerBait.com. And he's got another question for you this morning. He says, is it time for Coach Johnson to settle on a lineup so the guys can get comfortable?
Yeah, it's actually a great question. I think Jay is one of those guys historically, and I'd have to go back and look at old lineups at Arizona and old lineups at San Diego and whatnot. But I always kind of feel like he's one of those – he's a very, meticulous manager, and I think he looks at matchups massively. And so I think you're going to see guys move in and out at times. But, I mean, here's the deal. The guys we just talked about that we pinpointed that didn't produce against Florida in the decisive Game 3 – aren't guys he's taken in and out of the lineup. They're guys that are in there every single day. So, I mean, it's twofold, right? It's like, you want to settle on a lineup, but do you want to settle on a lineup that may not be your best lineup? And I think LSU at this point still doesn't know what its best lineup is. Until that point, I think tinkering makes sense.
You heading out anywhere this weekend or in the Homestead again?
Probably in the Homestead. I might go watch Auburn and A&M on Friday. I haven't seen Auburn at all. We talk about the SEC as a whole. You think LSU's in a bad spot. I mean, Auburn sit in a position to where they could be either 1-8 or 2-7 after the weekend. They lost. They got swept by Vandy. Lost the series to Arkansas at home last week, and a series, by the way, they were well in. They had a chance to win that series. But they go on the road to A&M this weekend, and I'm kind of pinpointing. I think it's Vandy that LSU has at home in a few weeks. That's where I'm kind of
Yes.
pinpointing coming back to Baton Rouge. So
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I was saying earlier. It's like, man, if you're struggling, you're trying to find your way. You're at Arkansas right now.
yeah,
You got Vanderbilt coming in next weekend. Then you go to Knoxville. It's like, man, how do you get well, or where do you find your place? And again, you're looking at some of these and just the way they perform in SEC play. Is it going to be a bunch of 1-win weekends?
yeah.
And then at the end of the year, if that's the case, how good or how bad are you? Just because the SEC is just so damn brutal.
No, you're right. I mean, Jay Johnson, I can promise he's already going, oh, man, I can't wait till we play Missouri and Auburn. And the problem with playing like Missouri, in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, it's in 4 weeks, is that's on the road. So, like, the one like gimme series you have is actually a series on the road. There's probably going to be 30 people there. It's not going to be an easy environment. But, yeah, man, it's just one of those leagues. I mean, you look at there is not a tougher start that anybody's had in college baseball to conference play than playing Florida, Arkansas, Vandy, Tennessee all back-to-back. That's incredibly difficult.
Now, I haven't looked at it in the last few days, but I looked at it earlier in the week. I don't know that Jay's probably very excited about where his RPI right now is either. And that was something that he said last week, that's what he pays attention to the most and looks at daily. So, all this stuff starts to add up.
You're right, and the problem is in the SEC this year, I don't feel like the difference between each of these teams is going to be a lot resume-wise. So it really could simply come down to who has the better RPI, because I think a lot of these resumes can be very comparable.
Around the SEC, outside of this series we're talking about, LSU Arkansas, what are you already mentioned A&M and Auburn? What are the other series that you're gonna have an eye on that interest you?
Yeah, I mean, I tell you what, and this week's edition of What Florida Team Will We See? Florida has Mississippi State at home. I saw State last weekend. Against A&M, and I really like their club. I mean, I like their club against LSU, but it's one of those things where like they're at home with the dude. It's a different environment than being on the road. But even though they lost that series, man, I thought they were a good club. I thought their lineup top to bottom was good. I like what they had on the mound. They actually get Nate Dome, their Friday starter, back, who missed the LSU series with an injury. So that series in Gainesville is really intriguing to me. Georgia, Tennessee. Charlie Condon, I think, leads the country still with 17 home runs already this year. He's just been absolutely ridiculous. But Georgia goes on the road to Tennessee. I think that's going to be interesting. I do think Tennessee is going to have their way with UGA, but we'll see. And then a couple of other ones, Kentucky, Ole Miss, and South Carolina, Bama. I think Kentucky, Ole Miss is really interesting for me because, Kentucky, swept Georgia. They were just okay against Missouri last weekend. Whereas, they go on the road to face an Ole Miss team who looked pretty good against Tennessee in one game, and they got run ruled in the other two. So that's an important series. I think especially for Ole Miss. I think for the Rebs, you've got to take care of business against the Kentuckys of the world at home. Then South Carolina, Bama is really interesting for different reasons. I mean, South Carolina, a couple of weeks ago, they go on the road to lose a series of Ole Miss. Their fans are all down on themselves. What do? They dominate Vanderbilt in a series sweep over the weekend. And then you have Alabama, who took a series from Tennessee and then lost a series on the road to Georgia. So I guess what I'm trying to say is welcome to the SEC.
I ask you that question every week, but one question I don't ask you a lot, but we do discuss it, is this other schools in the state of Louisiana. What are you seeing out there from Tulane, Tech, ULL, McNeese, etc.?
Yeah, man. I'll tell you what, the Raging Cajuns are starting to figure it out. When they played LSU, Andrew Herman, the lefty, if you remember him against LSU, he was really good, and he's been really good for them over the last couple of weeks. They're on a heater right now. They go to Texas State this weekend. They just swept ODU at home, who's historically a really solid offensive team. So they're rolling Tulane out of the they're still in the American, right? Yeah, they're still in the American. Okay, you have to make sure every once in a while. They're off to a really nice start. They were the odd team last year who, had won very few games in the regular season. They won the conference tournament, made the NCAA tournament, but this year they've been much better. So, Jay Ullman's done a really nice job there. And Law Tech's continue to do a pretty solid job. I mean, Lane Burroughs does an awesome job. And then Nicholls State and New Orleans, both those teams have done a really nice job this year. Blake Dean, the former LSU coach, he's one of those guys I feel like has done a really neat job down at UNO. I mean, when you look at those guys, I mean, they're competitive every single season. And that's a testament to the job that Blake does, especially when you consider that, he gets rated by the portal. I mean, they just came off a series sweep of Nicholls on the road over the weekend, and Nicholls is a really good club.
Yeah, and LSU hosts UNO in a couple of weeks on a Tuesday night. So, but yeah, anything else on the way out? And please tell everybody how to subscribe to D1 Baseball. I know I had one question before we get to that. How much do you guys talk to head coaches during the season, during the week? And when was the last time you talked to Jay?
A lot during the season. I'll be honest with you. Like during the season, I try not to.
A lot of it's off the record, isn't it?
Yeah, a lot of it's off the record, but honestly, a lot of the times I try not to bug them unless I just really need them. But Jay, probably not since Minute Maid, and it's that's kind of shocking that we've gone that long without chatting. But he's one of the best in the business in terms of responding. Like I always tell people this, and I have no idea what your relationship is like with Brian Kelly and what it was like with Les Miles, Ed Orgeron, and guys like that. But like, the coaches in this industry in college baseball are insanely good in terms of just responding. Like I can text Jim Schlossnagel or Jay or Kevin O'Sullivan, like probably right now. And by the time we got off this thing, I'd get a response. And it's cool. It's awesome to be in a sport like that to where guys are so receptive. And
well,
so
and I know
it's a different animal.
If you poll the media that have been around Baton Rouge and covered LSU in multiple sports for 20 or 30 years, they'd all tell you that Maneri was the absolute best. And I know you know that. And I don't think Jay's much different. But
Maneri, I feel like Paul was much more like aware of what was being said about the program, whereas Jay just is like, he wants to know the important deets, so to speak.
Yeah, I think Paul would probably debate you on some rankings or something you might have written.
Yeah, I don't think Jay's ever done that, actually. And even at Arizona, like I don't think I've ever got a call from him about rankings. I do remember the one year, and I think the 1 year Arizona, like they had a rough like regular season, but they won like 12 straight or something in the regular season. I remember he called me asking me if we thought they would make the postseason. But that's really the extent of like him. Yeah, I guess you'd call it like quote unquote politicking.
Yeah. I believe when he says things, there's some LSU coaches out there that say they don't watch social media and it's obvious that they do. And, but I think with Jay, if he says he's not, I tend to believe him. I think I think he's kind of a tunnel vision guy, OCD about what he does. And he makes a decision whether it matters or not. And then and if it doesn't matter, it's not on his agenda with all the hours he puts in every day. But
man.
All right, Kendall, tell everybody.
No, I was gonna say, looking ahead, I mean, 24th season on our site as the coupon code on checkout. You get 24% off any package you want. Obviously, we'll have plenty of reaction. Joe Healy's actually in Fayetteville this weekend for the LSU Arkansas series, so we'll have full coverage of that series. And maybe for you guys, maybe we'll be writing about a LSU series win. It would not shock me. I said this on Arkansas radio station yesterday that I would not want to play LSU when it's staring down the barrel of 3 straight series losses. That's just me.
Well, we'll see. I think, it's when we're talking about, taking one win, if you'll give it to them now, that's usually the kind of recipe for LSU doing something special on a weekend, like you said.
Well, I feel like they did that. I feel like they did that at Arkansas. Was it like 2 years ago or 4 years ago? If you remember, like it was one of those weekends where like Arkansas was heavily favored and LSU went up there and not only beat them, but I want to say they roughed them up in one of the games. So, it's kind of one of those deals. Like once you discount a program like LSU, that's when you tend to get bit a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't know. Maybe it's good for them to get on the road. I don't know, but
sometimes it is, man. That is a pressure cooker down there. I mean. I still talk to Nolan Kane about that from when he was at LSU, and he's like, man, He's like, they'll wear out the third base coach, much less a player. So,
well,
sometimes
your guy
getting away
Yeski's
from it helps.
Your guy Yeski's getting beat up pretty good this week, and of course Jay was getting beat up pretty hard about Ackenhausen and how long you kept him in Saturday night. But of course, I don't know whether that was him or Yeski.
Hey,
he says it was him.
That's why my man Yeski makes over $400,000. He can handle it.
Yeah. All right. 2-4 season is the coupon code. Go to D1Baseball.com. All right, Kendall. We'll talk to you next week, bud.
All right, Mike. Be good, buddy. See ya.
All right. Thank you.